Hey everybody, how's it going? It is Max and Trev with BuzzTox here, talking Westworld Episode 3, giving our analysis and thoughts about it. How's it going, Trev?
Really good, really good.
Yeah, we're just extremely busy right now. I'm in the middle of midterms, and you're in the middle of moving.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's been nonstop. So, and what are the odds that the most complicated Westworld episode drops?
Yeah, I know.
On the most busy fucking week of our lives.
Part of the busyness is you guys, all the subscribers. My God, you guys are like, it's almost like Vegas. Our phones are just lighting up like Vegas with all the new likes and comments and subscriptions. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you so much for the support. But given our busy week, we're going to try and give our best analysis of Westworld Episode 3. And it all starts with Bernard meeting with Dolores.
Yes.
He makes sure that Dolores hasn't told anyone anything about their conversations, and he gives her a gift. He gives her Alice in Wonderland, which belonged to his son.
Yes.
And she pretty much reads a passage about change. And I think, change can mean a lot of things. It could be the change from android to, sentient real life, and kind of the change into a new species.
Yeah.
Do you know the story of Alice in Wonderland?
Pretty good, yeah.
Because I don't. Is there any comparison there? Because I feel like Dolores is like Alice. Like, doesn't she look like that character?
Well, just like at aesthetics, yeah, she's got like the blue dress.
Are there any parallels?
Yeah, you could pull a lot from it. It's like she goes on like a trip, basically. She goes to Wonderland, and there's all these like whimsical things that are outside. Like, she's the fish out of water in this crazy whimsical world. It's almost too deep to go into. But yeah, the logic is there to compare the two.
Right. So then they continue their conversation, and Dolores asks Bernard about his son and where his son has gone. And Bernard immediately gets kind of weirded out by it and asks Dolores to go into analysis mode and asks her why he asked about her son. But to our surprise, it's just another mathematical equation done by Dolores. We've spent enough time together, and I thought I would ask you about your son to pursue the conversation, kind of a thing.
Yeah, but it seems like he was taken aback by that. So it seems like there's a little bit more behind that. Because, like, if they've been meeting together for a long time, it seems like these are, like, 30-odd meetings, private meetings. So you think that would have come up before. And that's why he was taken aback by it.
Exactly. And then they continue the conversation, and she believes that she changes every day. And she's been talking about it for a while. And she really questions who she is. And, do you think that origin started with violent delights have violent ends?
Origin how?
Because I feel like that was the virus. Because Abernathy kind of discovered this picture and love of Dolores. That human feeling made him question his reality. And he kind of spread this, like, virus or a sense of intelligence to Dolores through the phrase, these violent delights have violent ends.
Yeah, I think that would be like the definitely the tipping point, but I feel like they really made an effort to show that she's different. Like the opening scene, we see her in maintenance mode, and they're talking like he's having this meeting with her. So it could be that she's always been exhibiting these subtle hints of change or evolution, and like Bernard has just been picking up on it and secretly watching her grow, and this is just the biggest leap that she's made. Because I feel like when she saw the picture, that she lied about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, she's like, it doesn't mean anything to me. But I feel like the way that she looked at it, it seemed like she was lying. And also when the kid said, oh, you're one of them, and she seemed like, oh, yeah, like she knew, but she just played it off.
See, I don't think so. I think that was her journey. I think she initially did believe that, and she's programmed not to see things like that. She's programmed not to see the picture. She's programmed not to recognize aspects like that or inconsistencies in her world, which would result in her kind of turning it away. But, like, I feel like, what makes her so special is obviously she's the first one to the park. She's the one with the most experience. And, the most experienced, the most intelligent in a sense. And once you provide these violent delights of violent ends, which allows you to realize your reality and see your past experiences, she becomes extremely dangerous because she's had the most experience. And once she can see it all, Yeah,
she's been through every story point, plot twist, and everything.
And we even see this later in the episode, which we'll get into later. She plays on her past to survive. She uses her like deja vu instincts to, change her situation.
Yeah, she changes her fate.
But anyways, after this conversation, Dolores immediately wakes up. And we see her dad at the ranch kind of herding cattle, and it's obviously her new dad, not Abernathy. And we see Dolores kind of walking and opening a drawer, and she ends up finding a gun. And then we hear a voice, "Do you remember?" And to me it sounds like Bernard, but it could very well be someone else.
Yeah.
And she gets a flashback of the man in black dragging her into the barn and, I guess, raping her. And, you see her get very emotional and very upset, very angry. Just before, quick thoughts. Do you have any speculation on the gun? Like, I'm confident the gun is the one that she picked up in the yard.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah, and then
They wouldn't make such a spectacle of it.
Yeah, and she, like, a couple of loops ago, put it in that drawer to hide it. And I think it's a real weapon. But where it gets interesting is you see her get visually angry, but then it cuts to the drawer again. And she opens the drawer, and there's no gun in there. So, Trev and I, we have been big subscribers to the difference in timeline theory, but I want to give multiple perspectives, okay?
Yeah, we're definitely biased.
I know.
Because every time we watch it, we're like, is that it?
Is
that it? Is that proof, or is it not proof?
I'm going to try my best, because this, to me, 100% feeds into my theory, but I want to give the other side. So I think what you could say is that this is Dolores's coding ignoring the gun, right? Because it is something that she shouldn't see, like kind of the picture. You know what I mean? I'm really reaching here, but can you help me out?
No, it's really tough for me. I'm really biased. I'm dead set on this different timeline.
Okay, so let's fucking talk about it. So,
like, I know I don't want to go from only that perspective, and feel free to come back to our videos and just laugh and point and say how wrong we were, but I really feel like it. I'm putting all my chips on
everything artistically and story-wise is pointing to this. We see her emotional. It cuts to the drawer. Why does it cut to the drawer? Because it's cutting to a different time frame of when Dolores was 30 years younger. Well, she doesn't age.
Yeah.
30 years ago. And there's no weapon there. But what does that do? What's the purpose of that? Because we are flashing between the current time and 30 years ago. And look at the show from the rule of William and Bill are the only characters in the whole show that are 30 years in the past. That's it. That is the one rule. And if you look at every episode like that, you realize that everything that William and Bill are a part of is disconnected from the rest of the show.
Yeah. And it just serves as the timeline for the origin story of the Man in Black.
Yes. And
that's all it is.
And the purpose of this scene of Dolores opening, looking at the gun, putting it away, and the gun not being there was to hint at the audience and lead them into the next scene, which is the past. We get a shot of William immediately after that scene. And the way they cut the show is really important. Why did they have Dolores have the gun and the gun disappear just before William? Because they wanted to introduce the fact that, okay, now they're hinting at the audience, we're going into a new timeline now.
Yeah.
We're going 30 years in the past. Follow along.
Exactly. But subtly, so as not to be so obvious.
Yeah, anyway, it's really interesting. But yeah, with William, he's in town, and there's a wanted man, and he gets kind of dragged in, but he ends up escaping, shoots up a lot of people in town, and he takes Clementine hostage. And if you don't know who Clementine is, she's the prostitute who tried to come onto William earlier. And William tries to save her, fails miserably, gets shot. And I want to say the shot is very powerful.
Yeah, more powerful than we've ever seen.
You see the kickback on that shit? He flew so far.
Yeah.
And
like even more than a paintball, it seemed like.
Again, multiple scenarios. First scenario, I believe I read this in the comments. Unfortunately, I don't remember who, but it's stuck in my mind that this could be a cheaper package. The fact that when you come to Westworld, you can buy multiple Westworld packages. One package is $40,000, another package is $60,000, whatever, okay? And you could say that buying a more expensive package would make you more resilient to gun fire.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
But what I'm leaning towards is the fact that 30 years in the past, they still haven't gotten out all the kinks, and a lot of customers complained. And what do? They nerfed the guns for the customer's sake.
Mm-hmm. Because yeah, I agree with your thought. Because remember when we saw Teddy shooting the Man in Black, very first episode?
Yeah.
He shot at him, but he didn't shoot him on his head.
He was almost programmed not to.
Yeah.
It was the same way Dolores didn't want to shoot.
Exactly.
Teddy couldn't do it. It was almost like, yeah, he was programmed not to.
Yeah, and it probably because at one point, even a shot to the head could hurt someone.
Exactly, and that code was never changed. And
so like even a concussive round like the one that hit William could do some serious damage, and maybe they had to tone it down since William's timeline. But even still, like it definitely was a different timeline or no timeline. It was a different shot altogether, unless he's the biggest wuss in the world.
Yeah, exactly. He gets shot, he just jumps.
Yeah, he's really getting into it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he does get a little into it after he kills him. He feels like a badass. Bill arrives, and to his surprise, William has popped his cherry. They say, and he looks at Bill. He's got this giant bruise. He looks smug as fuck.
Yeah.
And we actually find out that William is marrying Bill's sister, so they're brother-in-laws.
Yeah. So it's like almost like a bachelor party kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not really friends, you know. They're family, you know. And yeah, they find it interesting because Bill just wants to fuck, and William has the idea to pursue a wanted man.
Mm-hmm.
So they leave to go on that quest, and then we go to Teresa talking to Bernard. She's pretty much telling him that Ford is a giant problem.
Yeah.
She says that Ford carved a huge part of the park for his storyline, which could be a part of the nowhere, which he was with that boy with, where he put that black kind of a church area.
Yeah, the chapel thing.
Yeah, and in his pursuit of this storyline, he ended up putting half of the storylines in disarray.
Yeah, because he pulled so many resources.
Yeah, so I think what this says is, you know, Ford, we've always said that he's in pursuit of a higher level of an artificial intelligence, or it's not an artificial, higher level of intelligence for these robots, which we actually find out later that was Arnold's desire.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I would agree with that until this episode.
Yeah, but what this says is that, you know, if he's a man who puts his business in jeopardy, then what is he pursuing? Because he doesn't have the shareholders' interest. He doesn't have management's interest because they want the park to run smoothly.
Yeah.
So what is he pursuing? He's running on his own agenda.
But it's always like it's like the Steve Jobs thing. Like it's like saying, I'm gonna design something that you didn't know you wanted, as opposed to, oh, I'm just gonna keep the shareholders happy. And he's like the creative genius behind everything.
Yeah, and even in the last episode, he touches on it. He talks about what people want. They don't want just cheap scares. They actually want subtlety and and like emotion. So I guess he's pursuing that. But like, is he doing it for the people? See, that's my question. Like, is he doing it for the people, or is he doing it for Arnold? Because he has the same kind of interest as Arnold. I don't know. There's just a lot to talk about.
Yeah, Arnold's a whole different ballpark. Like that's what opened Ford's character up here was his history. We even saw that really awesome shot they did showing him when he was young.
Yeah, it was unreal.
Yeah, it was amazing. But there's so many things with that because I just feel like he really did a 180. He was very open and like liberal, and then he about like what this place was and what it was for, and then he just went. He seemed to go really dark in this episode.
Yeah, and then speaking of Arnold, that carries over to the next scene when Elsie's actually really concerned because she's kind of interviewing a host to try and discover answers about Walter's kind of code breaking in the last episode. He kind of went off code and he went and killed 6 hosts, and he ended up letting 3 go. But what makes her nervous is that he killed the 6 people that were once in a different storyline with Walter, where they were supposed to kill Walter. So he was almost getting revenge on them.
Yeah, like he remembered.
And he was holding a grudge.
Exactly, like he was holding a grudge.
And he was talking to Arnold. He's like, "Where's the milk, Arnold?" He was like talking about milk and just like rambling on to this like imaginary figure, Arnold.
Yeah, which is sort of goes into a long shot theory I have about Arnold. But we'll get into that a little bit later.
But yeah, just he's talking about he wants milk, which, you know, that's not what they're made of, but they're made of a substance similar to milk.
Yeah, they haven't gone into what that stuff is.
Yeah, and then the fact that he, you know, is hearing this voice. You know, why is he hearing the voice? Because now, like, Dolores is also hearing a voice consistently. So, and then there's a connection there because Dolores is hearing a voice telling her to kill people, telling her to like wake up, all these different things. It does sound like Bernard, but there are other times where it doesn't sound like Bernard.
Yeah.
And then we have this guy talking to a guy named Arnold.
Kill him.
It's very strange. Plus, given credence that Dolores is the oldest, or one of the oldest in the park. So
Yeah.
she would be around at the time that Arnold guy was around, or maybe he even made her. We don't really know who made her.
Yeah, exactly. And who's to say that this Arnold person isn't really communicating with her too?
Or he's the one who laid the groundwork for her extra cognitive abilities.
Yeah, and they touch on it later, but I just want to quickly mention it's the idea of thought that, you know, they're not used to actually experiencing the idea of thinking, so they project that on an external figure. So Arnold was pursuing consciousness.
Yeah. But
And the fact that they are thinking, they don't understand that it's their own thoughts, so they're projecting that on the creator.
Yeah, almost like they're lobotomized. Like he describes a pyramid, right? So it's almost like not a lobotomy, that's very evasive, but like a governor, so they can't reach a certain point of consciousness. But it seemed like that Arnold guy was pursuing that.
Yeah, exactly. So we're probably getting more answers about that later.
Yeah, we're really going off. This one was a very, very layered episode. There were so many things to pull from this one.
Yeah, and then Bernard is obviously butthurt about her talking about this update, so she sends her on her way to chase after a stray host.
Yeah. I think it's because he's looking into it. Like, he doesn't... It's almost like they all have... Or at least those two have the same intentions.
He's looking into it, but it's almost in a way like he takes offense to it, but it's also like Dolores where he's trying to almost hide it.
Yeah, like she's barking up the wrong tree, but so is he on the other side of the tree.
Yeah, because he tells her to focus on her own job description. Like, he's the programmer, so just don't fucking bring it up.
Yeah.
So then she goes up to Westworld with Ashley, and pretty much this whole scene pretty much establishes again that Ashley doesn't trust the robots, and he always carries a gun with him.
Yeah, he's Will Smith from iRobot.
Yeah, which is smart, because, you know, the only thing that's keeping them from being hostile is a piece of code.
And he even says that, and it's like... he proves it right, almost, in a sense.
Yeah, and then with, like, foreshadowing, the immediate cut after this is Teddy going with a guest to visit this guy named Samuel. And Teddy and this guest, we know she's a guest because she seems way too casual and seems definitely like a tourist. They end up killing Samuel because he has a bounty on him. And they end up cuffing him to the front of the brothel, not to lose him.
Yeah.
And Teddy has an interesting interaction with Maeve. You know, she sees Teddy and she remembers him in the outside of Westworld. And she remembers her own experience, so she kind of flips out about that.
Yeah, she sees him in the like cleanup chamber.
Yeah, and you know, the parallel there is we're finding all the characters that have been whispered, these violent delights have violent ends, are experiencing past experiences.
Yes.
You know, Dolores is experiencing her past experiences, and the only thing that Dolores is the only one who whispered that quote to Maeve, and now she's experiencing it.
Yeah.
So there seems to be, you know, a connection there.
Yeah, like we know that they respond to commands via voice. So someone maybe buried a command within Shakespeare to them.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, that's really smart.
And maybe this Arnold guy was a Shakespeare lover, or maybe there's a third party here that we haven't been introduced to.
Yeah, exactly, because the only thing that they respond to is voice commands.
Yeah.
And that was done by Arnold, so it could be said that this quote is actually very significant.
Because I'm
kind of corrupting them, and that's kind of Arnold's development.
I'm not a Shakespeare guy. What's that supposed to be from Macbeth?
I believe it is from Romeo and Juliet.
Because like she was given books though by Bernard, so what would stop them from running into the story of Romeo and Juliet?
No fucking idea.
In their world, right? Because if they read that, would that mess them up?
I don't know.
Or does it have to be issued as a command?
I have no idea.
Well, no, because Abernathy came up on it with his own, right?
Yeah.
Which is even weirder now that I'm thinking about it.
No, he didn't come up with it on his own. He was once.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, he had it in him.
Yes.
right? So he had the book. He was a professor. He was well versed in Shakespeare, and the picture and a bunch of other things is what corrupted him.
Yeah,
Very
so
weird. That's hard to go down that path because
I know.
I still feel like we don't have the whole answer, especially now with this Arnold bomb that they dropped.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, anyways, Teddy's sitting at the bar, and he ends up seeing Dolores again, which is something very familiar. We've seen it a lot. And he ends up approaching her, and she seems way more upset than usual. Like, in the first episode, she was, like, so happy to see him, and in this episode, she's like, oh, you came back, wow.
Yeah.
So good to see you. So I think this really plays into, you know, she keeps saying that she changes every day. The reason she's changing every day is because she's becoming hardened by her past experiences.
Yeah.
So I think really what this shows is just, you know, she's becoming more experienced and more jaded because she's able to, you know, she's kind of becoming more herself in a sense because she's being able to experience everything that she's ever experienced.
Yeah, they're not deleting her history good enough, basically, and it's piling up and it's stressing her out because she doesn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. And she's so fucking pissed. She doesn't even ride with him to the hill. She's just she's standing there, and he has to ride there and meet her.
Yeah.
And then you know, they pretty much have a conversation, and Teddy said that, you know, I was away. You know, he's a very mysterious guy. And Dolores wants to leave immediately. She wants to leave, go somewhere. She feels like the world is like calling her.
Yeah.
And Teddy, what a guy. We will someday.
Yeah.
And that really pisses her off because she's really kind of learned, I guess you could say, over her past experiences maybe, that someday really means never. Because they live in a repeated world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's never any, you know, future, there's never any past, there's only the present, and the present loops and loops and loops, which means that, you know, you experience a lot of some days because there's no present or future to base it on.
But do you feel like she has the full story, or she just doesn't know what this feeling is of constantly being in a loop? She doesn't know how to resolve it in her mind. So I don't think she's like, oh, we got to do this again.
Yeah, I know. No, she's not like fully aware, but for some reason it seems like she's trying to escape her loop without even realizing it herself.
Yeah, like it doesn't seem like she has the full picture.
Yeah, but then also
she knows something's wrong with the world.
Yeah, but then on top of that, later it was said that, you know, Teddy's purpose is to keep Dolores on track.
Yeah.
You know, so Teddy, you know, takes her home and the shooting happens, which is supposed to happen because that's the cycle.
Yeah.
You know, Teddy comes, you know, he kind of keeps her in line, and then he escorts her to the house, and then the shooting happens. Which is what Ford was telling Teddy, which cuts to the next scene. You know, Ford is telling Teddy that, you know, he's died 1,000 times, or like thousands of times, and it hasn't dulled his courage at all.
Yeah.
And I feel like that almost foreshadows, you know, it's like Dolores, because like she's died, you know, many times now, but she's becoming self-aware, so it's actually making her giving her more courage. It's projected to be like in the future.
Well, which we see later on.
Yeah, so, you know, Ford really breaks it to Teddy, you know. He said that he told Teddy that he will actually never be with Dolores. And his job is actually to ensure that Dolores stays in town, that the guests find her, and that the guests have the opportunity to kill the gunslinger and to have their way with Dolores, like winning her like a prize.
Yeah.
So she's the damsel in distress, and as we said earlier in our last analysis videos, Teddy is literally coded to be the loser.
Yeah.
But then Ford gets into it and, you know, says that Teddy has a mysterious backstory because, you know, he never was given one. It's just laziness, or they just didn't bother.
Yeah, he was just like the janitor that they just brought in.
Yeah, and there was almost no need. But, you know, Ford has a plan for him for his personal story. So he gives him an origin story with the bullet points.
Does he ever?
Yeah, I know. Right? Jesus Christ. He became a superhero.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So he, like, in a time of war, a world in flames, there was a villain called Wyatt. He's truly evil, and they say that he hears the voice of the gods. And he pretty much tells him that Wyatt went to go hunt for natives, and he comes back with very strange ideas.
Yeah.
So what makes me wonder is that, you know, Wyatt, obviously, there's a lot of, like, imagery here, like gods. Like
yeah.
That's religion coming into it, which we've seen, like, Ford has teased, introducing that into the world. But, you know, you could almost say that Wyatt, I almost, like, every theory now, I always look at a character and say, are they based off another character?
Yeah, exactly. Like, he seems like more like a cult leader, though. right?
Yeah.
Like something's going on there where we see where Teddy sort of runs into these guys, but I don't know. Is there no religion at all in Westworld?
I don't believe we've had any real indication of religion. No.
Like they don't
Except for
talk
all the
about
towers we've seen.
God or anything like that. Like it seems like it would be suited to the time period, where there'd be like a priest or something like that. But
yeah, but no, there hasn't, which is very strange. But I think that is the next step. And then next we flash to Dolores again, and a group of people approach her, and there's one guest with him, and he wants to have sex with her, and they're trying to look for an easy kill there, and then Teddy comes in and saves her.
Yeah.
And then back off, and then we see Teddy like a fucking champion, shooting like 6 bullets in one like spot on like a piece of wood or something.
Yeah, he's
He's got like the craziest upgrade ever.
Yeah.
We were actually dying. Like we were laughing so hard.
So hard. I couldn't believe how like amped up he is.
He went from like always dying, like what a loser, to like the biggest fucking badass of Westworld.
Yeah, and he's like commanding now. He's like, we gotta go here and do this.
I
As
know.
opposed to like, okay, let's go.
I gotta go, darling. I got reckoning. So then, he tries to teach Dolores how to shoot, but she can't shoot. And it's not that, she's a woman. I got hate for that. I didn't mean that she was a woman. I was trying to say
Like her character.
that her character is the damsel in distress.
She would never be able to.
Yeah, and they don't allow her to use a gun like that. Because, later in the episode, we hear that, they selectively choose people, or they selectively choose hosts to use weapons, just to make it more controlled.
Yeah.
And, we know that because, he was telling Dolores, like, just pull the trigger. She's like, no, like, I actually can't fucking do it. Like, she tried her best and she couldn't do it.
Yeah,
So,
I took that scene as she really couldn't do it, even though she wanted to do it, and not like
she physically couldn't do it.
because her programming didn't allow it. It just wouldn't let her do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that backs up with code. She's coded.
Yeah.
She can't stop it. Exactly.
But it's not like, oh, I can't do it, where she's programmed to do it. It's like, no. Oh, this is weird because I feel like I should be able to do it. So, I guess
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just semantics.
And in the middle of this, Teddy gets called by all of his men to catch a bounty, and it's Wyatt. And Teddy, we get a glimpse of Teddy's like badass origin story. The old man's like, you're looking at the man who's the only one who survived, Wyatt. And then Teddy, to rub it in even more, looks at Dolores and says, I'll come back with you someday soon.
Yeah.
What a guy. And then he
like,
takes off.
It
into the
really
sunset.
solidifies, though. Like, he hasn't made any leaps, it seems like.
No.
Other than you notice something a little bit later on. But I don't know now if it's maybe they just goofed up.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see. But then it cuts. And this is an important cut because it goes to Ashley and Elsie. And they go to a group of men. They pause them. And this group of men hasn't moved because the man is missing. One of their men is missing. And that man's job is to cut wood. And since he's not there, nobody else can cut wood. So they're just sitting around the fire waiting for him.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, that's pretty much the show is telling you, like, oh, in the last scene, Dolores couldn't shoot because of their code, this reason. And then in the next clip, it kind of explain why subtly.
Yeah.
It's a way of not beating you over the head with it, but kind of casually explaining it.
Yeah, it's like that Skyrim glitch. Remember I told you that story where they couldn't figure out why the guy kept dying? Because the programming said that the guard needed a certain amount of food. So the guard would go into the prisoner's cell and steal his food, and the prisoner had no way of getting food, so he would always die. But it took them forever to figure it out. But it just reminds me that they're still in a video game here, so that's what's so cool about it.
Yeah. And the most important thing is Elsie actually finds carvings on the back of a piece of carved wood.
Yeah, which I called right away. I saw even before they were looking at it that they're constellations.
Yeah, he nailed it. We were looking at it. It did look kind of constellation-like. And, let's just talk about the constellations now. What do you make of this?
It's a way of navigating. Right?
It's a way of navigating, yes.
So it could be, maybe there's something in their programming where they use the stars to navigate and something's patching through, or maybe there's the voice of God, we'll call it, as someone's calling their name and say, follow these certain constellations to this area, right?
Yeah.
Like if you follow towards Orion, but she makes a point like Orion wouldn't be seen in the sky.
Yeah. Well, to me, it was that, but it was also, a further hint of like religion and a higher level of intelligence in the world of the robots. Because, they're becoming self-aware of perceiving things in their world.
Yeah.
And,
it's like one of the first things that humans started doing was looking to the stars.
Yeah, and perceiving stars is extremely important because think about it. It's a floating light in the sky that is actually a giant burning bubble of gas that creates an immense amount of heat. And that raises questions.
Yeah.
From Westworld, they don't know that those stars are actually little suns from far, far away. They just see them as floating lights in the sky, which raises questions. And I think, questions are really important because, questions are primarily answered by religion. People in history don't like asking questions. They want to know they want to have the answers. So what do? They make them up.
Yeah, that's true. And most primitive religions were based on stargazing and sky gods, so
exactly.
It makes perfect sense.
So it's the next level. It's learning about your world and then trying to understand it. Because if you look up at the sky, that is the most baffling thing ever. We live on a floating rock in the sky, and we're surrounded by all these like weird floating rocks and suns. It's like incredible. And I think, that really delves into, the concept of like question asking and the higher level of intelligence with robots.
Yeah, and also it brings a question for me, would be, I thought it would be like I knew it was a landmass that they were on. It looks like Monument Valley in Utah, I think it is, or Wyoming. One of those states. I'm not good at where they're actually filming. But it seems then they're using real landscapes and not like a simulated landscape or not like a enclosed area. So like it's open air. So this guy is a stray that they're chasing down. So is there a border to the area? Like it's starting to open up there, right? We see that hologram of the whole area, but what is on the edge, right? What would that guy be walking towards?
That's what I was wondering. I don't know, but I see it as a theme park that is not artificial. It is an actual place that doesn't have an artificial sky. It's a real sky and it's a real location. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, it just seems like that's a lot of land in that beautiful land for them to buy up. It just is a little bit deeper into what's going on in the real world.
Yeah, exactly. But then after that, we get a glimpse of Teddy, and he's continuing to tell his origin. So we get a little bit more details. So to make the story even more amazing, Wyatt was actually Teddy's sergeant and friend. And, Wyatt did disappear on maneuvers. They touched on that. And he came back with very strange ideas. And what he claimed was that his land didn't belong to the natives or the first settlers, but for someone that's coming, which is very fascinating. And they lived in a time of war and a world in flames. And, he's obviously considered a true villain, and here's the voice of God. So who is he saving his land for? It's almost like a religious thing, like he's saving it for a god or something.
Well, yeah, there's Christian believes that Jesus is coming again, right? Like he's coming back again. So there could be that angle, but I don't know. It seems more like he's like a devil worshiper by the way that they portray him. But I don't know. It could be a double bluff though. We see guys dressed with like skin on their face, so you think that it's the evil thing, but maybe it could be like in Christianity, they eat the body of Christ, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a little weird if you were to really extrapolate and think about it, but this is a weird cult that they could just do weird things.
I wonder if, it's Westworld, so it's supposed to be an accurate representation of, time in the West. Are hosts racist?
I don't know, like it's so far into the future, we have to assume that it's No, I don't think hosts would be racist.
They wouldn't be racist to guests.
Well, you think
They'd
like
be
they're
racist to each other.
Well, you have natives, right? Like there'd be native wars.
Because
that guy wanted to create like a native war, which would be kind of racist because they're killing natives.
Yeah. So
there would be racist.
That's where I'm going, because I think right now they're not really racist, because if you're obviously a business and you make a theme park, you don't want any racism no matter what, or any like sexism for now. Well, sexism you can't really avoid, I guess, with like Dolores and stuff. But I don't know. I feel like the pursuit of religion is also breeds a lot of other fucked up stuff that has come with our history, and I think we might see more racism introduced, and I think racism will be like a benchmark and really progress the Westworld forward and make it more realistic.
I don't know. It's a tough one for me because if like social justice warriors would have a heyday if there was a place like this in the real world. Like
wouldn't they though? Because what if you base it in like this is our past?
No, because it's like if people get up in arms when movies like Django come out or anything like that, anything's controversial. This would be unbelievably controversial, where you could go malign women and shoot natives and kill kids. It seems like there's some crazy shit that happens in this world. So there's no way it would fly in the world we live in right now.
No, yeah, exactly.
Right, this seems almost like you said, like Hunger Games, where it comes to a point where it almost flips back to a Roman Empire style thing, where we have gladiatory matches and they accept a certain amount of violence, but maybe only in simulated areas where it's safe for real people and they don't care about the robots.
Exactly. And so Teddy kind of finishes his monologue, and then they stumble across a man that's kind of hung onto a tree.
Yeah.
And he appears to be dead. But what's fascinating here that we mentioned earlier is Teddy, I don't know if it's a mistake or not, but he does swat at a fly.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is like over analysis or not. I just want to draw this forward because in episode 1 a fly didn't phase him.
Yeah.
And flies before have glitched out people because they're not coded to deal with that kind of stuff, because the fly is an external creature. It wasn't created by the park.
Yeah, but then at the same time, it's almost like you could argue it was programmed into it, because he's going to this place with his rotting corpses. So the realism of him like swatting flies in his face would add to the story.
Well, yeah, you could say like for some reason his origin with why they added a fly detector.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But it's hard to go into at that point. I think that more surprising things are ahead for this scene.
Or you could say the flies are fake.
Yeah, like they make snakes, they make horses.
Because it's like it's an artificial setup of a fake human, so you need fake flies to add the realism.
Yeah, and if you went into an area where there was dead bodies, there'd be lots of flies, and Teddy's subtle gesture of swatting a fly. That's
we're really shooting
circle
shit
jerking here. We're circle jerking.
Jesus Christ. All right, and then there's we hear a really weird horn sound, which I may be ignorant to this, but that doesn't sound like that's from that time period to me.
Well, there's I forget what the name of it is, but there's horns in the Bible. Horns of Babylon, I want to say, but that could be totally wrong. I'm not a religious scholar, but I remember from even this Kevin Smith movie called Red State, it's like that's how the movie's resolved, basically, is these horns that sound, and it's like they're supposed to, when God comes back and the rapture happens, you hear these horn blasts that signal the end of the world. So maybe I'm looking at it a little bit too deep, but we have religious undertones from Ford, and you have a guy that's got crazy thoughts.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because we hear that horn a lot too later in the episode.
Yeah.
But outside of Westworld, we see Bernard visit Ford, and Ford says that he plans to weave the old into the new.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the fuck that means. It could be like the old robots into the new, kind of like updating them.
Could be.
Like Dolores, she's an old, but she's been updated. I don't know.
We see some shit with Dolores in the previews. Like I said, she goes pants or adventure mode, and she's like shooting back on a horse. Like something crazy's happening with her.
Yeah, and speaking of pants, man, Ford really puts his pants on. Jesus Christ. He like flips out at this guy for covering up a robot, and really it was probably because of his own uncomfort. He wasn't comfortable with it.
Yeah, but it could have just been one of those like crazy professor-style things where he throws the book at the wall to get everyone's attention.
Yeah, he's
to
just
really
teaching
hammer it home. It's like these guys are nothing. Like you don't have to worry about covering them up. But he just did it in such an extreme way.
Yeah, but I thought it was funny.
Oh, it was weird. That's part of the reason why I
caught
thought
me
he
off
went
guard.
180.
Considering last one, he was like going on an adventure with a little boy robot, and then this episode, he's like, they don't get cold. And then he like strips him naked and then cuts him in the cheek.
And it just seems like he respects these. In the last episodes before, he seems like to respect and cherish these things so much that he's having a glass of whiskey with an old one in a cellar where there's smelly, naked people all around. So for him to jump to cutting the guy's face, it just seems really out of place. So I don't know. Maybe he's suffering from some mental breakdown too.
Man, I don't even know, but yeah, Ford takes Bernard to his office. It seems like it's office. I'm just going to say it's his office.
It's got to be.
And, Bernard brings up he doesn't believe that, the problem was solved with the update, and that, it's kind of a disease that, the robots are spreading this onto each other, kind of like the violent delights of violent ends thing.
Yeah.
And he says that, robots are talking to this imaginary figure. This imaginary figure is named Arnold. And then Ford really goes into their origin story. So he said that him and Arnold, who is actually his co-founder, were at the park 3 years earlier, before it was actually open to the public, preparing the park, building all the hosts. And the difference there was that Arnold wanted to create consciousness.
Yeah.
And, we always thought that Ford wanted consciousness, but now we find out that Arnold actually wanted consciousness. So now I'm kind of thrown for a loop here.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And another reason why it seems like he took a 180. But it's hard to resolve without knowing now the history of Arnold. We only know he was a partner of his. He was seeking for like ultimate realism when it comes to the personalities of these hosts, and that he died in the park, and we don't know how. And we know it was covered up.
Yeah, because he was chasing this, this pyramid theory, where on the lower part of the pyramid is improvisation and then self-interest, and then the top, it goes memory, improvisation, and then self-interest, and then the top is actually empty. And Ford said it was believed it was based on, I believe it's called biochemical mind. I quickly looked into that, but unfortunately I'm in the middle of exams. But what I gathered from it is that one side of the brain is pretty much the speaking side of the brain, and the other side of the brain is the side that obeys. So I don't know. I'm going to have to look into that later. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to look into that. Sorry, everybody.
This is the heaviest part of the episode, which is why I love it so much, because it goes that distance. You know what I mean? Like it's really going into psychology of these things, and the psychology of the real people too.
Yeah, but what's really important is that Arnold was actually finding certain measures to try and make them more conscious. He actually installed kind of like a program system where the robots would actually hear inner dialogue in their mind based on what their programming was doing.
Yeah.
And he believed that by doing this, they would soon become conscious. But what ended up happening was that they ended up thinking it was like gods.
Yeah, so it went bad. So do you think he is the accident from 30 years ago?
Yeah, I think he definitely is. Like, he was pursuing that, and he put in the code. So, Walter's running around yelling, Arnold, Arnold. It's because he's probably accessed that code that he put into him. And instead of him realizing that it's actually his own thought, he's projecting that thought onto this external figure, Arnold.
Yeah.
Who allowed this to happen.
This is hard to resolve, man. So we know that the people that were around 30 years ago so far, where this Arnold guy remains to be seen. He's assumed dead. The man in black has said he's been coming here for 30 years. And Ford, obviously, because he's a founder. So what's going on here, we still don't know 100%. I have a little bit of a theory when it comes to this Arnold guy with the little information that we have.
Yeah, the only thing I gather is something really fucked up happened 30 years ago.
Well, I'm thinking maybe uploaded himself into the game or into the programming, and he is the voice in these guys' head. So maybe now he's self-aware enough that he can start making moves and programming other people, and at the same time he might be the man in the maze.
Yeah,
and he's
one
calling
man in the
certain
maze.
people.
It's one man in the maze,
right?
Which is interesting. And yeah, if he discovered how to really, not completely solve it, but able to somewhat project consciousness into these androids, who's to say that he could create himself an android and try and create one as best he could in his image that would do as he would have done?
He transcends his body into super consciousness so that he could help these new creations, these new forms of life through his eyes, into conscious beings, which is, again, really reading into it. But I feel like this Arnold was a giant bomb that was dropped.
Oh, it's crazy, and there's a lot to it. And, Ford, he said the problem with Arnold is that he didn't consider two things. One thing he didn't consider is that, Westworld is the last place you want conscious robots, obviously, because they start realizing the shit that they're in. And then, there ends up being a freaking rebellion.
Yeah.
But the other thing he said was that God's thing I was talking about is that if they can hear their own thoughts, they don't project it on themselves. They think it's a God. And I've always thought that Ford, in a sense, could be pursuing something similar to Arnold. And it's almost like you could look at it as Ford is actually laying the groundwork to make them smart and conscious. Because you could say that he's adding religion. And if he adds religion, it's almost already giving them an external place to put their faith in God. So when they get their actual thoughts, they don't project it on something they don't know.
But, maybe he's trying to do some sort of, cleanup. Or he programs their religion so that they can't think of it on their own. Right? Because as I'm thinking of this, my theory, what if... Okay, this is a hard one to web together. We got Arnold his consciousness in the game, and he's calling out. The man in the maze is him. The man in the black is William, and he's searching for that upload so he could be with Dolores forever.
Yes, and we said that last analysis.
Right? So it's so out there. I know tin hat. Or tinfoil hat. It's a hard one to web right now because we don't even we just found out about Arnold.
And my mind has been everywhere. I've been William. I've always been stuck on William is the man in black. But then I'm like, what if Arnold is William? But that doesn't add up.
No.
What if Arnold is the man in black? That doesn't add up. To me, the only thing that adds up is William is actually the man in black.
No, because they would know that the co-founder is back in the.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So now
unless
I'm trying
he
to
created another body that he's in.
Yeah. So now maybe next episode I'll have the answer. But why? I'm trying to figure out the man in black's story arc. That's more than just himself. I want to see how it relates to Arnold. I want to see how it relates to 30 years ago and the event that happened there. So I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, time will tell. I guess it's just that's going on in my head.
Exactly.
Little peek inside.
and then after this mind-blowing conversation, Ford said, the update should really remove all the voices in the robots' heads, and he reminds Bernard that the robots aren't real. And he brings up his son, saying that, I know it weighs heavily on you. Don't put your emotion towards these robots. I know you're vulnerable. Don't make Arnold's mistake.
Which leads me to believe now that Anthony Hopkins, like I was saying, is trying to clean up this mess now. So maybe he is not saying oh, that's crazy that something's going on that Arnold wanted to do. I'm gonna create this religious story, so it will zap their need, and we'll have them religious, but under our control.
Yeah,
it's a hard one to sell, but it's a tough pill to swallow in the sense because we've seen him. He seemed like he was a pusher of consciousness in the last 2 episodes, but he really changed his mind in this next one. He's reminding Bernard in the scene they are not human. He cuts the guy's face. It's almost like he's pissed off that they're changing on him, and he's sort of lashing out.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But then we get, a taste of Bernard's side when he goes and he talks to his seemingly wife. It's the mother of his child
Yeah.
that has passed away. So they, pretty much have an interaction. They're talking about their son, memories, all that stuff. And we see, his son in the hospital, flashbacks, just connects you to Bernard. And it shows you that he's in a really vulnerable position. And he's very damaged, obviously, because he lost his son.
Yeah, to like an illness.
Yeah, so it's just a character arc.
Which is probably pretty bad, too, because Ford says pretty much they can cure everything in the world that they live in, and something had to really badly happen to him.
Yeah, and with Bernard, I just want to quickly touch on. In the last episode, we said that it is very possible. I didn't put stock in it. I said 50% Bernard is a robot. This scene makes me lean more towards he's actually human. I'd prefer if he was human, but that being said, Ford. It wouldn't surprise me. You could also put in a story of him having a wife and all this backstory and having a fake wife and all that shit. But I personally am now backing the fact that he is an actual human.
No, he's seeming pretty human, at least off the end of this episode.
Yeah.
Right, like he was being human in this episode in full. Like he's talking to his ex-wife or a estranged wife. And he seems humanly motivated at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And then we go back into Westworld and we see, Elsie is still mind blown on how they ended up carving Orion in that piece of wood. And, she has to take a pee, and then she finds out that in like a crevice, the stray is actually trying to climb out.
Yeah, like he fell down there without... Almost like he was like what's those robot vacuums?
I don't know.
He like fell off the stairs into a crevice that he couldn't get out of, but continued
he's like
trying
stuck.
on the path.
Yeah, it just blew his mind. He doesn't know how to get out now.
I thought initially he was trying to like dig in that area, but no, he looks up like as if he was
he's stuck. He fell and he like got injured. But during this exact same time, Teddy gets attacked by a bunch of weird, I don't know what the fuck these things are. Oh my fucking god! And they don't get damaged. Superhero Teddy, man, did fantastic. I think he shot like 6 shots in like a second, and he shot all of them.
Yeah.
But they all didn't take any damage, and they all ended up killing him. Now, everyone's saying that I feel like the thing that I'm hearing the most is these are guests. I don't think they're guests. I think that's the answer that's been handed to us, that guests obviously don't feel pain.
Yeah.
But I think there's something more to it. I remember in the first analysis I asked, is it possible that this is an accurate Westworld, or do you think it's like the Hunger Games where they throw in like a mutt every once in a while, like something like a video game to really fuck something up? We'll throw in these people who don't die and maybe add that to a religion arc.
Well, it was definitely Ford's planning for this to happen, because it seems like he upgraded Teddy in order to go on this quest, right? So, I don't know why these guys can't die.
It's almost like they're introducing a new level and like pulling away from reality in this sense. Like the next level pulls farther and farther away from reality.
Yeah, big time, because you even see it in the girl's face. We only know this girl from this episode.
She's like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, exactly.
She's like freaking out.
I think I asked it after we watched it, like, what would happen if you were this person? The sheriff's dead. Teddy's now slaughtered, like usual, but at least he went down fighting. And she's out in the dark woods with these things. Like, did they just stop right before they're gonna kill you and give you a ride home? I don't know. Like, it seems pretty crazy.
I have no idea. And there's a big difference. They were wielding actual like weapons, like axes. And there's a big difference between guns and axes. Guns, you can have the pellet, where if you get shot, it's not a real bullet. It doesn't kill you.
Yeah.
But with axes, if you get swung with an axe, you're fucked. So, it's interesting to see, sometime, is there going to be like a robot that actually doesn't have that core code? I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, we know a robot can do a lot of damage with a rock.
I know. Jesus. So, yeah. They're in this,
So it flashes back to Ashley and Elsie.
Yeah, and this robot. So Ashley decides to saw off this guy's head just for like all he needs is his head for like research purposes or whatever.
Oh, I took it as he was trying to get in there to figure, like, he gets to, like, the USB chip of this creature. But he has to go in through the neck or something.
Yeah, I guess you're probably right. But he's sawing off the head. Mid-saw, he wakes up, pushes him out of the way, and just starts climbing. He didn't attack Ashley. He just kind of pushed him out of the way.
Well, no, but, like, see, Elsie was the one that picked up on it. She was the one that put him in sleep mode. And then was watching him, and then his eyes seemed to click or blink, and then he's back in fighting.
Yeah, and he just woke himself up, just like Maeve, right? And, he's climbing up, and she's freaking out.
Yeah.
But he does something very unexpected. He picks up a rock. You think that he's going to kill her, because I've been expecting an actual person to die in Westworld.
Yeah.
But he actually beats himself over the head with a rock. And I want to clarify, it wasn't Ashley pulling on the rope making him hit himself in the head. He actually chose to hit himself in the head.
He's just smashing.
So to me, this just clearly means one thing. Killing yourself isn't logical. And it's more emotional. And that is a very human thing to do. We're a species that is very reliant on our minds. We're the only species on this planet that actually has that level of, of thought, and we it's illogical and it's more emotional, and we're the only species that actually kills ourselves. And I think what this really just showed is the progression of robots becoming more sentient. The fact that he killed himself means that he was in pain, means that he didn't want to live. That's what it speaks to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So yeah, and then moving on from killing yourself, Bernard actually goes and talks to Dolores. And he's in kind of a conundrum after talking to Ford, and he really doesn't know whether to reboot her to her previous memory or to leave her the way she is. And, you can tell that Bernard has a lot of respect for Dolores because he doesn't make the decision himself. He actually asks Dolores. He puts her just purely in improvisation mode, and he asks her a question. Would you choose between you have two versions of yourself. Would you choose the safe person, or would you choose, the person who feels and asks questions? And Dolores says, there's only one of me, and once I discover who this person is, who I am, then I will be free. And that, really speaks volumes to Bernard. And he puts her in analysis mode and asks her how did that response come about? And she said she doesn't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's hard to make sense of.
I think to me that just further speaks of intelligence and sentience.
Well, yeah, we see it in the last scene with her too. It's almost like this is the first time she's woken up.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to this. This is the big part of the show. So, boom! After this conversation with Bernard, he sends her away, leaving her in improvisation mode.
Yeah.
And asks her to stay on her loop. And she ends up back in Westworld, and she finds out that Teddy may be dead. And she ends up going back home because that's her route. And, of course, the shooting happens again. And she runs right to the house. She sees her dad dead on the ground, and then she gets grabbed. But then her dad flashes back to Abernathy.
Yeah.
So what this just shows is she is accessing her past experiences. Because of, either violent delights or violent ends, or because she's special, she's able to access these past experiences because she's relived this situation over 1 billion times.
Yeah. She followed every branch and chose the one to get her out of this situation, is how I took it.
Yeah, exactly. So she saw, her new dad flash to her old dad. So she's like, oh my God, this is crazy deja vu. I've seen this all before. And then the guy decides to take her to the barn just like the Man in Black. And she took his gun. I just want to point that out. Before I didn't realize that, but she actually took his gun.
Yeah.
And she pointed the gun at him to shoot. Now, Dolores, in this whole situation, she's relying on her past memories and past experiences. Before, she wouldn't have grabbed the gun from the guy. But she knows what being dragged to the barn results in, so she's trying to protect herself.
Exactly. Which gives
And-
credence to the Men in Black not being such a bad guy after all. At least
Yeah.
in my eyes, like I feel like he brings her there to make her remember what she needs to do based on her struggle.
You know what? You could be right with that. Because, she has to tune into the horrible memory of the Man in Black for her to shoot the man.
And Maeve had to tune into that same horrible memory for her to wake herself up.
Yeah, so that actually means a lot to me because he says that suffering is what makes them most real. And suffering is what breaks their core code. She is, by code, not supposed to shoot anything.
No.
But because she witnessed this suffering and she remembered her past with the Man in Black, it allowed her to break her core code and shoot him because she was truly feeling like emotional.
Yeah, like almost as if it went back in time to a time where maybe she was allowed to shoot. I that's what's hard for me to understand. Like, she just overwrote that code, or did she go back to a memory where maybe she was able to shoot at one point?
I think you can just disassociate yourself and crack it. I think there's another example, unfortunately, but it's not coming to me. But I think it also speaks volumes to, the Man in Black's motives. Because, you see him as this, bad guy. But it could be that, he really does want them to be free. And to do that, to make them most human, he realizes that he needs to scar Dolores, for life. And make her and put her in a suffered state so this could happen.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, suffering, he says, is what makes them the realist.
Yeah.
So it's something that transcends their programming.
Yeah. So then she escapes, she runs out, and she gets called and she gets shot right in the stomach. And she holds it, and then you see blood actually coming out. And then time resets again. She looks up, she's actually not shot. And she sees the guy drawing attention to her. So what she just did there is the same thing she's been doing this whole thing. She's reverting back to previous memories because she's lived it over and over and over again. And she's using this knowledge to her advantage to help her survive.
Yeah, she gets to each branch and then chooses to go on, or if she got shot, that would be game over.
Yeah,
but in the case she gets shot at, where we figure out, and it misses, and she continues. Because do you think that guy was a host?
I think he was a
guest, right?
Yeah, a guest maybe. I'm not sure. I don't remember which guy it was, but I don't think I think it could have been a host, because last time she remembered getting shot, she's like, oh, I don't want to get shot again. So she moves faster, and she makes her decision up quicker.
Yeah.
Because it allows her not to make the same mistake she did before.
Exactly.
So she gets on the horse and she flees.
Yeah, rides into the darkness.
Now this is the fascinating part. So Bill and William are at a campfire at night. We find out that you spend $40,000 a day to be there.
Yeah.
And we see a very disoriented Dolores
show up on the outside.
kind of like wobbling, and kind of lands in William's arms and then kind of faints, it seems like. There's no blood on her stomach.
No.
Which really confuses me.
I don't. For me, it's not confusing at all. She was handed to William because he's into the damsel in distress thing. He didn't want to take the hooker damsel in distress as a prize, so they threw Dolores at him in this separate timeline.
No, but if it was a separate timeline 30 years ago, Dolores would have been shot.
No, but I think she's coming. I don't think this has anything to do with it. It's not always that she gets shot. She ends up rolling in because that was what she was programmed to do for William in this scene.
Okay.
Like it's something different.
Because this is my logic behind it. If you look at the Dolores who used her wits, who used her past knowledge to escape, she's in improvisation mode. She is not finding this random man and falling into his arms. She just lost her home, her parents died, and she's on pure improvisation mode. And she's not disoriented. She didn't get shot. She's totally fine.
And I guess tried to just rape her with a gang of hosts.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense for her to land in
Yeah.
another man's arms.
And she wouldn't
Absolutely
just
no sense.
slowly do that. She would just like hide out. It seems like.
Yeah,
No,
so
I
that
agree.
to me explains that it's not on the same timeline. And I was really looking into like they could have maybe hid the fact that she was shot, but I'm not sure. I really don't know. But to me, to me the timelines all fit together. Just if she was shot, it would have fit together perfectly.
Yeah, but like I would assume she would have gotten away sometimes, and other times not.
That is also true. She could have gotten away sometimes and, met William in that instance.
Right, depending how messy that meeting gets. Right, because it's not gonna pan out the same way every time. We see the one solid time where the Man in Black, who's a seasoned pro at this game or coming to like most experienced at coming to the amusement park, knows every inch of the place and how every script goes.
Yeah.
Whereas it's this loser that tries to get with her early on just shows up with a gang, and maybe it foils. And I'm sure there's a lot of guests that aren't good at shooting and so on and so forth. So it could be that she just made it away.
Yeah, because Dolores has lived the same scenario for like 30 years. Exactly the same with a bunch of little different intricate details. So it is possible that, there could have been 10 scenarios where she could have got shot and she escaped. And
Yeah.
we got a glimpse of one of those times in the past.
Exactly.
So, I find that very interesting.
But it's a shared thing. She got away this time in the timeline that we think it is, meaning we're calling it post Abernathy, and then pre Abernathy, which would be anything before then. This is where William would show up, and we're thinking it's the 30 years ago, but it could maybe be a little less. But we're thinking he's the Men in Black, though, so it has to be back then, if we're following through with this theory. It's a really tough one to do.
And this, our questions will also be further answered in episode 4, because, now she's on her own. She's in improvisation mode. She hasn't been shot. She's in good health. I don't think she's with William.
No.
The current time Dolores. And I think, we're going to see that next episode. Do they catch her? Do they reset the world again and she ends up back in this loop with memories about what happened the night before? Or do they not reset her and she's kind of going rogue? Because it looks like in the tease that she's going kind of rogue and she's not with William.
But what happens if someone was using Teddy? What happens if someone was using Teddy? Like, remember those guys in the first episode that used Teddy as a guide, and they distract him from being with Dolores?
Yeah.
So she would just go there and whatever would happen would happen. So she might have a story where she shows up to that campfire to whoever, whether they're a white hat or a black hat. We don't know, right? If nobody goes to get her, then maybe she runs away for another reason. There's all these different resolved story arcs if one thing doesn't do another thing.
Yeah.
So it could just be this is the first story arc we see where Dolores runs into someone at night, and they just cut it to make it seem like that's where she ended up after the botched raping.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like, in closing, no matter what way you slice it, there is multiple timelines no matter what way you look at it, because Dolores is accessing her past experience. So even that in itself, which is pretty much is proven. So there are multiple timelines in a sense. So I feel like the show would actually explore that more.
So whether you're seeing it or not, well, we already saw Anthony Hopkins 30 years younger.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, there's a huge connection in the show between now and 30 years ago. And there's a huge disconnect that I can't really ignore between William and the rest of the characters that surround him. And I thought, it's a huge disconnect between Dolores marching over and falling in his arms. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense. So I think Dolores is going to be on her own. She's not going to be with William, and Dolores is going to be taken from William, and that's going to explain the past timeline, and then new Dolores is going to be on some fucking adventure. I don't even know.
Okay, so here's how I have to resolve this from another perspective. Throw out the timeline theory, throw off all that stuff. She shows up. William is like, oh my god, this girl needs my help. Awesome, that seems up his alley. He falls in love with her. That goes back to the Man in Black theory. He's gonna fall in love with Dolores. Like, why else is he there? He seems like he's not just this innocent guy that's there. They're really pegging him up to be this guy that's torn between the real world and this world, where he's trying to discover himself. And it really seems like he's the guy to fall in love with the Dolores. This is where the whole Men in Black theory comes from.
Yeah, I know, but you can't have that theory without the time theory, right? So.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. That's why it's so hard to disassociate myself from the different timelines theory.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like everything the show has given me is so blatantly clear that there's different timelines, but this one scene is leaving me questioning, which I hate it for it.
Yeah, because they have to throw you off the trail. I don't know if she's going to be with William on the next episode, but if she is, I'm sure it still will be left open to say, like, oh yeah, I'm in such, like, I need you, because that still serves the purpose of her being the one that he falls in love with. Do you get what I mean? So
yeah.
It would be a soft reason as to why she was in his arms in the first place, where we're still thinking, or the audience is supposed to think, that she ran there because of her waking up.
Yeah, exactly.
She's only ever really confided in Teddy to say, like, hey, like, don't you want to get out of here? And he's like, someday. And she's like, okay, you're still a robot. And she only really talked to Maeve. Well, she only just whispered the virus words to her. And that's it. She hasn't really confided in anybody, any other robot in the park, to say something is not right here.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see, because you would think the first things that she says to William is saying, hey, I'm a host here, but I feel like I don't belong here, or this story will start drumming up where she's explaining her situation. That could be. And he feels for her, like, oh my god, I should be now empathetic towards you because you're stuck here in this awful place where people just want to do the most heinous things to you. Now I'm in love with you, and he is not the Man in Black.
Yeah, the character that we saw with Dolores approaching William, it wasn't a self-aware person who felt like they were in a bunch of different realities. It was a legitimate person who felt like they experienced something, like, crazy.
Yeah.
Like, terrible, which shows that, it wasn't really the modern Dolores. It seems like the old Dolores, and I feel like every connection, every time William has been with Dolores, she's not the way she is currently, self-aware.
Yeah, she's pre-Abernathy episode.
Exactly, yes, but yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this episode. Is there anything you want to add?
Oh, there's oodles, but we can't go on for too long, my goodness.
Yeah, there's definitely oodles, and, this week we've been extremely busy. Next week, I'm off school for a week. Next week, hopefully, you're moved into your house.
Yep.
And we'll be able to actually just kill it. And, really kill these Westworld theories. And just, do a great job. I'm really excited to delve deeper into Westworld for episode 4.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Yep. See you later.